So we know that there is a lot of passion for taxis. I'm going to start with that. So those questions are done and utilised. I know that you've just mentioned CCTV, and Councillor Shazad has some questions around the CCTV. So do you want to lead with those for me, love?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's great to see that obviously CCTV will be there, and will it have the direct connection to Network Rail Police? And will it be as effective as the existing camera that they used to have? Because that used to be able to pick up face recognition of the passengers getting in, and also pick up the registrations of or the numbers of the Hackney carriages that used to take those passengers. So both to cover the driver safety and the passenger safety in case there was any complaints on either side, if any violence took place against the driver, or if anything untoward. Would that be of that quality? Because the quality of the camera beforehand was really, really good, and it did help stop a lot of issues at those Hackney carriage ranks. So just that question, if you could answer that please for the moment.
Yes, certainly. So the CCTV camera within the taxi rank will be linked back to the admin office within the station, and also British Transport Polices that are located up on New Station Street. In terms of the camera itself, the camera is going to be is upgraded, obviously, from the existing. In terms of your specific questions, though, if I could take that away and confirm to you outside of this meeting, I can get you a more of a technical response and confirm that.
Thank you. Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, that'd be great if you could get us the technical response, because it's very important, I think, on safety grounds, that for both the passengers and for the drivers, it's very important, because they don't have no real other safety other than that camera, especially for the drivers. They're on their own. You could have a rank no matter how many cars it holds, but when it's busy, you could have a time where only one car comes in, and the only way that he can feel safe is knowing that he's covered by those CCTV cameras, and they are of a good quality in case there's a problem to the driver himself, or the driver causes a problem to the passenger, which they shouldn't be causing a problem to the passenger, but just in case. So it needs to be of good quality, and it would be really appreciated if the technical specifications were cleared and the police were actually... Is that a question? Yeah. So that link to the transport police, how effectively is that monitored?
My understanding from speaking to British Transport Police officers is that they have monitors within their main office within on New Station Street, and it is effectively rolling live.
I think it's probably not a question for Chloe as such, in that it's more about the efficiency of the police dealing with their links. So I wonder if that's a potential other recommendation, that we contact the police and ask them that question, and how they can satisfy that we're content. Does that sound effective, Chloe?
Yes, it does, Councillor. Thank you. I think it's also worth saying that the... Oh, sorry. Yes, it does. Thank you, Councillor. I think it's also worth saying that the specification was developed with the British Transport Police and Network Rail. So the starting point was the existing, and then obviously, because things move on, it's an upgrade from there. So it should meet your specification. Chloe's just wanting to make sure that you have all of the details.
Thank you. I'll move on to the other side, if you will, of the station. So given the plans for HS2 will now not go ahead, what's the long-term plan to resolve the, to be polite, challenging issues relating to congestion and accessibility at the rear of the station? We know that it's not included in this particular sort of phase, but it would be good to have some idea of what's going to be going on moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, this relates to both phases 2 to 4 that members saw on the diagram, and phases 5 to 9. So I'll hand over to Jo in a minute on the phases 2 to 4. But in terms of phases 5 to 9, that was where HS2 was proposed to come in and meet the station. And as part of HS2, the pick-up and drop-off, the interchange with mass transit with buses and active travel was all going to happen underneath the HS2 viaduct. Obviously, with HS2 being cancelled, that's not going to happen. The other most notable thing was that HS2 was going to acquire the properties as well to create the space to enable that to be built. So at the moment, the Department for Transport has safeguarded the land adjacent to the station, running right down to just where Asda has its merchandising facility, whilst a feasibility study is undertaken to look at what the long-term solution is for onward travel from the station. And that's a partnership across Department for Transport, Network Rail, West Yorkshire Combined Authority, Leeds City Council, National Wealth Fund and Platform 4, who are the new property organisation associated with Network Rail and DFT. That study's due to complete this summer, but then we need to look for funding opportunities. There will need to be consenting strategies. So there's quite a long way to go in terms of developing those proposals up.
Just for anyone watching that isn't au fait with the language, what do you mean by safeguarded land?
Sorry, yes. So originally HS2 had land safeguarded, which meant that there was effectively an order which meant that if people wanted to develop within that space, so build a house, build offices, they needed to, the planning department needed to consult with HS2 Limited and Department for Transport, who would then determine whether or not that development was going to prejudice the ability to deliver HS2. So when HS2 safeguarding was lifted, this further safeguarding was put in place, which is effectively an order, which means that the planning department would still need to consult HS2 Limited and the Department for Transport if development was to come forward in that area. It effectively safeguards the opportunity for transport infrastructure in the future.
Thank you, that's helpful. And should we bring Jo in next, please?
Yeah, just to confirm, our position is phased on the delivery of LESP, so the Leeds existing station programme, which is picking up the activities to the back of the station. So we will have a construction phase, which will move once the Hackney carriages have moved back to the Bishopgate area as per Chloe's project. We will then have we will be closing the Princess Square area, which is the area directly outside and currently used for pick-up and drop-off, for a construction compound, moving the pick-up and drop-off point further to the, I would say, west, past the short-stay multi-storey car park. There'll be a new mini roundabout further down that road, enabling vehicles to head down there, past the multi-storey, turn at the end, and then drop off on the way back up towards the station. There'll be provision for disabled parking retained within the Princess Square area initially, before it is moved to the car park opposite the short-stay multi-storey car park. On completion of the LESP works, that will then be, the Princess Square will then be reinstated with drop-off and pick-up facilities in their current position.
In their current position, as in their current method?
Yeah, there'll be some changes to the layout in terms of how they access the Princess Square area, but that general area is where they will be.
So that sounds like there's very limited improvements planned. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it'll be pretty much it'll be an improvement on where we are at the moment in terms of segregating the Hackney carriages onto Bishopgate, But other than that, there aren't large-scale improvements as part of the Leeds Existing Station programme.
Thank you for that clarity. I think for me, there is some pretty sort of strategic issues with at the back of the station, which I don't think just moving the Hackney carriages are likely to solve enough of. So I wonder if another recommendation could be to support the ongoing partnership working with you guys to resolve the issues of accessibility, congestion and onward connectivity at the rear of the station, especially given what Angela said about requiring more funding and it being a long-term thing. It feels like something that would be useful for the Scrutiny Board to keep its sort of finger on the pulse of. Is that something that members would be content with? Yeah? Councillor Pryor, you haven't got an issue with that, have you? No? Lovely. Excellent. Okay. And then there was Councillor Buckley.
Just a question on this specific point, actually, Chair. On page 48, it says here that the aim of the Transforming Cities Fund through improving onward journeys for passengers on foot, by bus and cycling. And of course, as has already been touched on slightly, this doesn't include the 90% of people who want to drop off by car and pick up by car. And so this, you mentioned that you're going to have a new drop-off point. When will that be completed? And how far away from the entrance is that, please?
Is that for the interim or end state, or would you like some confirmation on both? Both. So on an interim basis, while construction activities are ongoing, we expect that to be, I would suggest, 40 to 50 metres further away from the existing drop-off point, noting that disabled will be retained within the existing area. Construction activities are due to finish mid-2030. There may be some opportunities to bring the reinstatement of the compound area before that, depending on the phasing of the works, but we can't commit to that at this stage. On completion of that, the drop-off and pick-up will be in the Princess Square area, which is where it is at the moment.
Thank you. I wonder if you've got any data. I'm really surprised by the 90% statistic around people dropping and picking up at the station by car. It's not something I do very regularly at all. I'd always get the train from Pudsey into the main station and things. And I just wondered what our statistics are around that 90%, either from Councillor Buckley if he's got that directly, but if not, whether you guys have got any statistics of how people actually get to the station.
I haven't. I'm simply using the figures that people talk about when transport and cycling and walking and so on is put into the equation. The fact is, and buses, the fact is that 90% of people still use cars as their choice of transport in general. So just the figures suggest, therefore, that the same thing applies to the station. People will want to go by car and want to pick up by car. Otherwise, how are you going to get there with cases and everything? It's ridiculous, isn't it?
I mean, I was hopeful there would be some sort of research base or something that suggested it was 90% for the station. I wonder if there is, because I just can't believe that many people want to drive into the station, especially given how problematic it currently is. I just wonder if you guys have done that data analysis, and if not, is that something that we could recommend that was done to see what the actual method people are driving or not driving to the station is?
I haven't got it to hand, and I can't remember the figures off the top of my head. We have good data as to what vehicles use the station from a pick-up and drop-off perspective, and how many there are on a daily basis. I expect we'd have done that onwards travel assessment to see how the station is used. I'd have to look through my figures and come back to the board on that, if that's acceptable.
Yeah, thank you. That would be really helpful, because I guess there's also the element of, I would imagine a whole bunch of people don't use suitcases because they're using it for like business travel and such like. So it's probably a wider issue. And perhaps when we have this come back around the back of the station in future, based on the recommendation, maybe that data could be included in the paperwork at that point. That would be really helpful. Now, I'm not going to bring in anyone else except Councillor Chapman on taxis. This will be the last taxi-based question before we move on to the other stuff, and it is a wonderful segue into the rest of the discussion around accessibility. Councillor Chapman, over to you.
Thank you. Now I'm worried. I've got two questions then, if that's okay. The first one's probably now more of an ask, because you've actually explained some of it, but could you go into more detail as to why we couldn't go back to using New Station Street following the replacement of Milgoit, which you said was the original plan, which to me would have made sense. So I'd like to understand why we can't do that. And then the second one is, as we haven't done that, what was the reason for putting steps in to get down to Bishop Street and not providing any sort of ramp access? Because 160 metre walk all the way down the front of the side of the station, then back down Bishopgate Street to get to a taxi rank is quite a long way, and a ramp would presumably have shortened that distance.
So in terms of the first question, the reason that we couldn't put the taxi rank back onto New Station Street was because of the increasing size of the station effectively. So back in 2019, it was anticipated that the station would be full, as in up to capacity, within 5 years. And obviously that was not at that point anticipating COVID. So really COVID has saved us from the point of view of the station not being full. But we're now back to the position as at 2019. So we're anticipating again that the station will be full to capacity in the next 5 years. And I think what we mean by that is people will be held back from the gate line, not able to move to the platform until just the point at which the train arrives. And obviously it's quite a distance from the Southern Concourse to the platforms for people. So that was the driving factor originally in terms of creating that space at the front of the station, which enabled people to gather ahead of, whilst we were still looking at the expansion of the station. It has to be said that there will obviously be works going on, as Joe has set out for the Leeds existing station programme, for the next 4 or 5 years. And during that time, areas of the station will have to be closed off while those works take place, which means that a constrained space will become an even more constrained space. So having that spill out onto New Station Street for pedestrians in a safe space without vehicles is really important. So that was the principal guiding factor. And in terms of the second point, which was a really good point and one that was raised to us by planning committee when we originally took the scheme through for a planning application, plans panel asked us to look at whether or not we could install a ramp. We did a significant amount of work on that, and there just isn't the space, given the level drop, to get a safe ramp space that would enable proper passing. So we did actually take that report back to plans panel to confirm the position at the time.
Thank you. Did you have a follow-up, Councillor Chapman? Or do you want to come back in later?
Can I think about it?
You can. You can think about it, don't you worry. I also realised I got caught up in the debate and didn't challenge the use of male pronouns only for drivers of taxis and hackney carriages. Women also do these jobs, and indeed non-binary people, although at a lesser rate. So we will move on to the wider discussion. I've seen indications from Councillor Ali and Councillor Bruce already. Do you still want to come back in? Not on taxis?
Certainly not on taxis.
Wonderful. Good. Go for it.
Chloe, Angela, the chair mentioned something about problematic. Is the layout made in a way that is problematic for the usage of 90% cars? I think it's a lot higher than 90% of users that use the car to access. You've got a figure of 500 space hub for cycles. How did you come to that figure? I've not finished, Angela, sorry. You said that, Chloe said it was an asset for the city. How was the tendering done for this? Is it value for money, for users and the city? What is the current usage? The chair did ask for data, so I'm asking for that. Where is the data for this number? If so, does this have capacity for plus and a minus? So if there is no usage, what you're going to do with this space? If it goes beyond that usage, what plans have you got in place? Thank you.
Who'd like to take those?
Shall I start, and then Chloe will come in with the detail. The overall scheme is part of the Transforming Cities funding from DFT, which is focused on active travel in particular. And therefore, this scheme met those criteria. The reason that we looked at 500 spaces was because we looked across the station as a whole. And obviously there used to be the Evans cycle hub on New Station Street, which was removed as part of this scheme. That had a significant number of cycle spaces. I can't remember exactly how many. 280. And in addition to that, across the station, there were numerous other cycle parking spaces, which will have to move around as the Leeds existing station programme takes place, which means that there will be a reduction of cycle parking spaces within the station during those works. So this hub was designed to, first of all, take account of the fact that there was an increasing number of cyclists using the existing hub, but also secondly to accommodate during the construction period the loss of cycle spaces. I think that was the first question in terms of the 500. I think the second question was in terms of the problematic issue in terms of car users. I mean, I think this is a really good question because the station, as you're all aware, is on a very, very constrained piece of land. There's very little public lands and certainly not Network Rail land surrounding the station. So at the moment it's constrained in terms of car users' usage. And this is really why we need to look at this alternative onward travel solution so that we can provide additional provision for private vehicle users as well as taxis. In terms of the tendering, we used a framework contract which had been out to competition. It's called the SCAPE framework. That was procured on the open market, and we then procured the contractor from that SCAPE framework. And in terms of value for money, those rates had been set as part of that open competition. Throughout that process, we've also checked and challenged the prices being quoted by our contractor. And we have very strong contract management led by Chloe with commercial management consultants supporting us on that. In terms of the current usage, apologies, Councillor, was this in relation to the passenger numbers?
Yes, it's, I mean, been asked by the chair not to ask. So you've put 6 taxi. Sorry, my apologies. Thank you, Councillor Shazad. So you've put 6 taxi spaces outside Bishopgate Shelter. Yet you've put 500 spaces of cycle hub. I'm just trying to understand how you came with that. You've explained your rationale, but I'm still can't understand how. So on the Princess Square, how many spaces do you have at current? And with the cycle, I'm just as a normal person, I'm struggling to understand that.
I wonder if it's worth, I'll bring you in, Councillor Pryor, in a second, but I wonder if it's worth touching on the fact that that's just the hub, the rank, although we're not talking about taxis anymore, but that's just the rank that's in that bit. There's a feeder rank that means there's a bunch more spaces and they just feed round. It's just so that it's as much space as possible can be used for other things. Councillor Pryor?
I think the difference between those numbers is how people use a bike and how people use a taxi or private hire. So if you've cycled in in the morning, you'll park your bike there, so that's 500 spaces where the bike is left there all day. The 6 spaces for a taxi rank, that doesn't mean it's 6 taxis versus 500 bikes, because those taxis are constantly changing. So those 6 taxi ranks may have, if each one averages, I don't know, 10 minutes, you will have 36 an hour. If you put that over 10 hours, that's 360. So even though it's 6 spaces, it's like comparing apples and oranges, comparing the 6 to the 500, because the bike is there all day. The taxi's not parking in the station in the same way a bike is.
What excellent maths, Councillor Pryor. Good work. Yeah, you can.
So, Angela, you've talked about, I mean, thank you, Councillor Pryor. Angela, you've talked about the criteria. You had 280 spaces here to some there here. There is no data to support this on usage. That was my question around the amount of spaces you've allocated to cycles. Yes, we've lost this many spaces. Yes, we've put 500 into cycle space. But what data do you have on usage? So because this has to be data-led, okay? And the second question around is the problematic layout of the station, okay? But it's what you have at this present moment. You've identified, okay, that the station is a problematic for the cars, okay? Is the current system fit for purpose that you are proposing now? Until when will it be not fit for purpose? We know, and you've identified, that there is a problematic for cars to get in. So you are proposing a system.
I think they've at least partially answered that, but I think the bit from your question that probably is worth an answer, again, is it sounds like you're almost asking for the future proofing. So at what point do we think the station will grow so much, we'll get so many people riding bikes in, we'll get so many private hires, our railway infrastructure will be so well utilised that we'd need to do this process again. So is this a 50-year plan? Is it a 20-year plan in terms of capacity for the station?
In terms of the Leeds Integrated Station Master Plan, that was a 20-year plan. So the cycle hub was a 20-year plan. And if you look back at Leeds Station, you look at 2000 when there were 9 million passengers, and by 2019 there were 30 million passengers. So we're anticipating a similar growth rate between now and the late 2040s. And really that's a size of capacity that then leads to the need for infrastructure change.
It's horrifying that within 20 years it's the late 2040s. Okay, I also have a question on the cycle hub, if that's okay. So I'll just slide it in now. And that is it designed for commuters, as in people to cycle to the train station in Leeds and then get on a train to go to another city? Is it designed for people to bring their bikes from sort of district centres into the city centre and then park it while they go to office, etc., workplaces? Or is it designed as a hub for sort of a central location for everyone that happens to work in the city centre? I mean, we have cycle parking here, but if we didn't, I could, when I cycle in, instead of parking it here, I could park it there and then walk up to Civic. Or is it all three?
Thank you, Councillor. It's designed for all three. It is obviously it's located at the station, so it will pick up passengers that are coming into the city to then get on a train and go to another city. But also it's designed as being a city centre cycle hub facility, that if I was coming in from home working in the city, that I could then park my cycle if my place of work or whatever didn't have facilities available. So it's very much all three, as you say.
Brilliant, because that's something that we've brought up in planning several times, that there just isn't enough cycle space for when you get to work. Excellent. Okay, next we have Councillor Bruce, please.
Thanks, Chair. I represent Ardsley and Robin Hood ward, and it's a collection of villages. We don't have any train stations at all, and we're poorly served, mostly by public transport with poor connections and unreliable, etc. So I think my constituents would be asking, you know, the question that's already been asked about drop-off. Are they going to be able to drop off, and how easily? I've dropped off before. I mean, to be honest, I drop off more in Wakefield, my husband, than Leeds currently. But when I've dropped off in Leeds, which has been quite a bit, it used to be really difficult to drop off because there weren't enough bays to drop off, and there used to be blockage because everyone was coming in the same way. You had one lane of traffic, so it would queue up pretty badly with people dropping off and people trying to get into the car parks as well, and taxis. So it was chaos, basically.
Councillor Bruce, I'm really sorry. I love how effectively you're fighting for your local area, but they have answered questions on the drop-off, and it's not part of this specific paper because it's a future thing, which we'll have a recommendation for to be able to keep on top of it. Can you email me the specifics of what you need, and I'll make sure that's included in the papers for next time, because the detail just isn't here currently to do that.
Well, I just think at this stage it's worth looking at this type of problem, you know, when you're planning for the future. So, yeah, and I think that's what we'll do through the next process. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Councillor Goodall.
Yeah, thank you. On the cycle hub, the thing I hear from people most regularly in Headingley and Hyde Park is that they want to cycle in, but they are concerned about security. Whenever I'm in the station, I see most of the cycle parking inside the station is full because it's so popular and it's so much more secure. So I see that the cycle hub says it's going to have CCTV, but unfortunately we've had lots of cases where there has been CCTV, but the people stealing the bikes have got balaclavas or hoods or whatever, and the police just say, sorry, they can't be identified. So I'm just trying to understand, is the cycle hub also going to be staffed? It's not quite clear from the paper. Are there going to be people there kind of checking that the bikes are okay? And is there any other kind of security provision to keep the bikes there?
So, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, the cycle hub will be a Network Rail asset, and Network Rail are currently in the process of appointing a cycle hub operator. The council are not privy to those commercial discussions between the company that they're talking to. Obviously, we feed into what we would like to see as a local authority, what we hear from stakeholders similar to yourself, but ultimately whatever agreement is put in place between how the cycle hub will operate is between Network Rail and that cycle hub operator. So I'm not yet in a position, because Network Rail haven't formally appointed, to confirm whether the cycle hub will be manned or not. What I can say is that it was designed to be a manned cycle hub, and as you say, there is CCTV throughout the cycle hub building in all levels that go directly back to the admin office within the station. The cycle hub itself is secure in terms of access control. So again, in terms of how it was designed, whether it is manned, and whoever that person is will be able to let people in and out of the cycle hub, or if it's not manned, then there'll be access control where people can only access in the cycle hub if they have a code to be able to get in, and they will only be given that code if they obviously then pay for a ticket. So apologies, that might not fully answer your question. It's just that I don't have those details because the council are not privy to those conversations.
I wonder if, Joe, is there anything you can add that wouldn't be commercially sensitive?
Yeah, as my understanding at the moment is that we will not be, the proposals that we're looking at don't include a manned cycle hub. It's likely to be app-based and will be on a rolling code. So the code that you get on the app will only allow you in for a certain amount of time, and you will need to note that every time you need to get in and out, you'll need to re-log into the app. So we'll have good access controls. Further to the CCTV, there will be a security walkover from a counter-terrorism perspective at the station on a routine basis as well. That isn't fully manned, but will be as part of our general operations.
Great. Isn't fully staffed. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you. I've got 2 or 3 questions on different things, I'm afraid. First of all, what concerns have been raised by the disability community about accessing the station? And the proximity of the drop-off points to the actual trains or platforms. And the paper mentions some highway implications to the western side of the station or the city as a result of these works or the extra works. Do we know what that implication is, or what the issue is going to be? I know it says it hasn't got a solution yet, but it would be good to know what we might be looking at. And I'll just mention charging for the EV bikes, because you can't do that in the hub, as I understand it, because Network Rail don't allow it. Is that usual? I know you can do it in the multi-storey car park that's on the other side of the station, so I just wondered why we can't do it in the hub, because presumably 500 bikes, some people may want to charge it before they go back home again.
Okay, who'd like to come in on that?
Thank you, Councillor. In respect of the disability point and the proximity to platforms, this project, being phase 1 of the Leeds Integrated Station Master Plan, only deals with from the entrance on New Station Street down to the taxi rank. And we did have considerable discussions with disability groups, as well as setting up the inclusive design group, which had representatives from all protected characteristics, in order to design the scheme to support people as much as we could. What we can't do, obviously, is reduce the distance between the door and the platforms, but what we've tried to do is make sure that there's level access from the entrance to the lifts, and then through the lifts down to the taxi rank. We can add a bit more detail to that if I can bring my colleague in.
Thinking it through, because I mean, obviously the inside the station is level and accessible. I was just asking about, are they fully on board and happy with the design that's ultimately what we've got? Or
Yes,
have they still got concerns that we should maybe be looking at to address in the future?
We went through a number of different groups, so as well as as putting together the inclusive design group itself, we also had a number of reviews with the accessibility and I can't say it now, access and usability group. We also discussed with a number of different disability groups as well, and they were instrumental in terms of the design. So once we'd completed the discussions on the design process. As Chloe said before, wherever we could, we incorporated the requests that were made by those groups. And if we couldn't, then it was because we'd investigated it. So, for example, like the ramp, it was because it wasn't possible, not because we didn't include it as part of the scheme.
I think it's just also worth adding that the project from feasibility right through the design development was supported by a National Registered Access and Inclusion consultant. That was a specific ask of us from the you've got me now, the AUAG. So we appointed that individual from the outset, and they were instrumental in terms of ensuring that the designs met all requirements. And I think I just wanted to, And also, I suppose as well, just to add that we were also heavily supported by the council's access officer as well, who was also heavily involved. In terms of your question around charging of bikes, so this was a recent policy change from Network Rail that we were notified of only in the last 12 months, I would say, and that policy came into play because Network Rail had some health and safety concerns around the charging of bikes in an enclosed space. And so we were asked to remove the electric charging facility from our scope. That doesn't necessarily mean that electric bikes can be stored. They can, they just can't be charged.
Network Rail, did you want to, or Joe indeed, did you want to come in on that at all? Okay. In which case, we will move on to Councillor Thompson, please.
I asked about the traffic issues or highway issues or implications to the west of the station. It mentions it in one of the paragraphs. It just says the solution's being worked, and I just wondered what the issues were. Sorry, I'm trying to find it now. I can't find it.
Let me bring in Councillor Thompson while you find the paragraph, and then I'll come back to you. Is that all right? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Chair. So clearly the more we can do to get people on buses, on foot and on bikes, the more space it creates for those who do need to access the station by car. I'm really fortunate to represent a ward that has one of the busiest stations in Leeds, and even when we went to Italy by train, we walked to the station with our suitcases, and there was no car involved in the whole journey from Guiseley to northern Italy. And in fact, you can get to Geneva in 11 hours, which is quite remarkable. But that's for another day. So onward bus journeys. At the moment, you get into the station and there is no information anywhere about where to get a bus, what time the bus goes, where the stops are. And there hasn't been for years. This has been raised repeatedly at Transport Committee when I was on it 3 years ago and by others since, and there has been no progress. And I don't know if this is a WICA problem or it feels like it's a Network Rail problem, not talking to WICA. We have bus displays on Infirmary Street, which is great, but you've got to be able to find Infirmary Street to find the display. It just seems like a ridiculous gap in enabling people to use public transport, get people out of cars, get people out of taxis, which frees up space for the people who really need them. I'd be really keen to see this properly integrated so folk just know where to go. Thank you.
I would probably defer to my colleague Helen, who isn't able to join us today, in terms of the historic position in terms of onwards travel in respect to buses. I'm afraid I just don't have enough detail to provide.
Councillor Pryor looks happy to come in.
I have found some data on access to stations and how people get there. I'll caveat it with it's national data, so it's not just for Leeds Station, and it is pre-COVID. But it is walking 46%, car 20%, which includes taxi and private hire, bus or coach 10%, cycling 9%, and underground, light rail or tram 14%. Obviously that's national, so some of that doesn't apply here, but I think it gives a rough indication that it's just fewer than half of people will walk to a station.
Thanks. In terms of the question around buses, I wonder if, given Helen's not here and we know that there is other stuff coming back, whether it's worth having a recommendation that we contact Network Rail and WICA in a joint letter to say that we would like there to be some partnership working to get that sorted. Because it is wild that there's no just display. Because also it's all well and good getting to Infirmary Street, but not all buses go from Infirmary Street. You need to know which subsection. And WICA have done an amazing job of sort of hubbing the different subsections and it being like Infirmary Street, A, B, C, D, E, F, Ball Lane, A, B, C, D, F. And actually you just need to know where that bus is. And yeah, I think there's some work there, especially with the new app coming in, that could potentially link quite effectively to some display boards and departure boards on the station concourse. Wonderful. Councillor Chapman, did you find the paragraph?
I did, thank you. Yes, it's number 4, right at the beginning. It says the enabling works will have implications on the surrounding highway network. Discussions are ongoing between Network Rail and the Council's highways and transportation colleagues on the nature of the impacts and what mitigations can be implemented to minimise disruption on the western side of the city. It's just, we've had a lot of disruption on the roads and it's a hot topic of conversation amongst an awful lot of our residents, so I just wondered what that is referring to and what it's going to mean.
That is referring to the proposals we've got for the Leeds existing station programme, so which I covered on briefly earlier. So moving the Hackney carriages and drop-off points from Princess Square further along past the short-stay multi-storey car park. I think it's a fair comment that we still need to work through the detail with the highways team as to exactly what the impacts will be. Our aim is to minimise those as much as possible, but with the investment and the scale of the work at Leeds Station, there are likely to be some impacts.
Lovely, thank you, and thank you for finding the paragraph. I've got 4 councillors who still want to speak and 3 minutes. So you're going to, oh no, that's a lie, 8 minutes. I'm not as good at maths as Councillor Pryor. So if we can be swift with our answers, that would be ideal, because I don't want to cut anyone off. Councillor Rondry.
Thank you, Chair. Be as quick as I can with these then. Firstly, we've spoken about passenger volumes and how we are now back to where we were in 2019, pretty much, so we've overcome the impact of COVID. I suggest, I've heard this elsewhere, that it's not the same sort of type of profile of passengers, that there is more of an emphasis on weekend travel and less on your Monday to Friday peak hours. And clearly, you wouldn't have known that when planning for this project started. I'm wondering how that has been factored into sort of the current design and what the implications are for that, because like your weekend passengers are going to perhaps require different facilities, have different ideas about onward travel or getting to the station in the first place. So how's that been factored in, please?
I think that's a really good question. When we started the project, obviously we couldn't anticipate COVID, but we were still in the design phases when COVID hit. Again, what we couldn't anticipate was that weekend travel would come back ahead of commuting transport. But I think it's safe to say now, and I'm just looking at Joe for confirmation, that actually in terms of commuting, certainly Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I think Mondays now are pretty close to back to where they were pre-COVID in terms of commuting. But weekends have remained really busy as well. So I think in answer to your question, we couldn't have anticipated it. We went through COVID whilst we designed the process, but I hope that because we paid particular attention to the various different accessibility groups, actually we catered very much for people that might be using the facility differently, and therefore it caters for all user groups, not just commuters.
Thank you. Councillor Ali?
Thank you, Chair. Angela, you said that regarding the future proofing 20 years, is that from completion or when you started? Okay. And the second question is around the disability users. Now, you've said that you've had other bodies involved and design was supported. Well, the design was supported because you couldn't deliver the walkway. You couldn't physically deliver it. So does it serve the protected characteristics? And how do you know this? Because you can't deliver it for the disabled people, so the design is supported. How do you know this? What data do you have? Have you been to other stations where this is not then the case because they couldn't deliver it?
So taking the accessibility question first, this refers back to Chloe's response before about us appointing a professional, inclusive, accessible design consultant, as well as working closely with the council's access officer. And they brought their whole range of experience and knowledge of other stations, as well as accessibility issues. And in addition to that, we also worked with the Network Rail Built Environment and Accessibility panel, who confirmed that this was an acceptable design solution. So that's why we believe that what we've delivered is an acceptable solution.
Thank you. It's also worth remembering that there are 2 lifts and there is a level access. It's just longer than a ramp would be. Councillor Ali, I'm afraid we don't have time.
My first question hasn't been answered, Chair.
20 years from the date of completion or when it was put in.
Sorry, the 20 years, effectively is from now, because it's the capacity that we're anticipating. So the Department for Transport sets the capacity and the timescale, and they've suggested that they believe the forecast for Leeds Station will be 50 million passengers by the end of 2040s.
Lovely. Councillor Shazad?
Yeah, thank you. I think Councillor Thompson has kind of asked my question, but again, there's a lot of focus of integrated travel, and it seems to be the only forms of travel when you get to the train station is, unless you're riding a bike or you're getting a taxi, getting a bus is just impossible. And I don't seem to understand. We've got a bus station which is quite far away, and I know you can't change the direction of where the actual station is located, but why isn't anything being put into plan with the West Yorkshire Mayoral Authority regards a bus service and the ability for people to actually get a bus in and out to the train station, which is very difficult, especially if you've got suitcases. It's fine if you've only got a small walk, but then I don't really see any integration between the bus service and the train service.
Councillor Shazad, we have so little time,
yeah, that's it.
And we've already said there'll be a recommendation about getting that integration. And also I think it's probably appropriate to correct the record that it is not in fact impossible to get a bus from the station, not from the station land, but it is possible to get a bus with suitcases from around the station. And Councillor Buckley.
I'll be very brief, Chair. It's just a comment on Councillor Thompson's remarks about her trip to Italy. And just to say, I may have mentioned this before, but for the benefit of the officers who haven't heard it, Leeds North East constituency is the only constituency in the United Kingdom never to have had a yard of railway track, let alone a station, so we couldn't do that.
Not with that defeatist attitude, Councillor Buckley. Right, I'm not letting any of you come back in. You've lost your you've lost your privileges of talking. Thank you so much, officers. I have some questions, but I'm very aware of time. So please, if you can answer any of them now in a sentence, then please do. But don't feel like you have to. The one that I think is worth really mentioning is that the project is being funded by the Transforming Cities Fund, which therefore does not include City Square, which obviously having this amazing public realm just on the corner but then City Square, that to the untrained eye looks relatively unfinished, is, I think, a real problematic element. And I wonder, therefore, whether there's the potential for an additional recommendation for us as a scrutiny board supporting you guys to access further funding in order to be able to get that City Square so that whole public realm element looks as beautiful as the stuff that this should do. Is that something that folk are content to have in? Lovely. And then my questions are wayfinding in terms of the lifts. If the lifts both go out, which obviously it's unlikely to, but we also know that they do sometimes go out at the same time, will there be wayfinding in place from the top of the lifts around that 160 metre with a sign saying if the lifts are out type situation? And then my second question is, are there opportunities, and this is probably to Joe around the further phases because it's already been planned and is in, well, we saw how much had been built. Are there opportunities to incorporate more opportunities for play in the design that we're making? So places kids can climb, places kids can run around in a safe environment, because I'm sure many of us have taken children on trains, and by the time they get off and before they got on, they need a run around. Thank you.
I recognise that challenge around the children. We don't have any proposals to include play space within the LESP design at present.
So I'm not suggesting, and I'm happy to take this offline and have a further discussion with you, because one of my key passions, alongside bins and parking, is play in planning. And actually planning playful spaces doesn't mean putting in a play area, because you're absolutely right, it wouldn't be appropriate to have a play area there, but that doesn't mean that playful spaces can't be incorporated. So perhaps it would be worth us having a conversation outside of here around that. The wayfinding?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. So there is, in the plans, there is no wayfinding that would direct people from the steps around the step-free route. It was deemed that that would be confusing. So in the unlikely event that both lifts should fail, Network Rail staff would be there to guide people to the taxi rank from the step top of the lifts.
Great, I think that's a really great solution. I guess my only concern with that would be how effective, and you won't be able to answer this just now, how effective will it be for Network Rail to know that the lifts are out? Is there an automatic alarm or something like that in order that they know to put somebody out there?
Yes, there is indeed.
Oh, you can answer it now.
Network Rail have
Problem
maintenance
solved.
contracts in place as well, which
you can come again.
Service level agreements for response.
Lovely. So our actions, the recommendations were to be appraised of the current position of the LSSTG, which I think we definitely have been, to support ongoing, and then these are further recommendations, to support ongoing partnership working with Network Rail to resolve the issues of accessibility, congestion and onward connectivity to the rear of the station, and to support efforts to secure additional funding for future work to improve City Square. And finally, we also added in the letter to WICA and Network Rail on integrating bus connectivity within the train station through mapping and departure boards. Was there anything else that I've not encapsulated in that recommendation list? No? Lovely. Okay, we'll be moving on to item 9 in about 3 minutes, but we'll have a comfort break before. Thank you. Lovely. We'll move on to substantive item number 9, employment and skill support for care experienced young people. Firstly, I'd just like to say how pleased I am that we're considering this item today. The report provides some examples of groundbreaking activities, and I'm really keen to support our young people who are care experienced. I don't know why I can't read today. I'm keen that as a board we offer our support to the team delivering this, and I hope our engagement will strengthen the good practice that we already know is taking place. I'd also like to reiterate my comments at Chair's brief that the recommendations set out in this report are examples of best practice. Constantly as Scrutiny Board chairs, we are wanting a decent set of recommendations and not just noting, and the recommendations in this are absolutely phenomenal and will form best practice moving forward when I speak to other officers around the council and other organisations. So we'll start by having introductions, please.
Hi, Fiona Bolam, Chief Officer for Economy and Skills.
Good morning, Gillian Wallace, Head of Employment and Skills.
Hi, morning everyone. I'm Jacinta Kane. I'm one of the Heads of Service for Corporate Parenting.
Okay, and Gillian, are you doing our Fiona? Okay, go for it, thank you.
Thank you. So, this report's given an overview of the work of the Employment and Skills Service over the past 12 to 18 months to support our care experienced people in Leeds, and it outlines our next steps. There is a lot of detail in the report, and I think it's also important to remember the context and why we're doing this. So the Employment and Skills Service works really closely with colleagues across the council to support Leeds City Council's strengthened commitments to care experienced people, following that decision to recognise care as a protected characteristic locally. So this has included working across directorates of the council to ensure that our programmes can be leveraged to add value, extend the impact and improve outcomes for care experienced young people through some coordinated whole council support. So if I just think about why we focus on care experience and not all protected characteristics. So we have a role as a corporate parent, and we're committed to improving education, employment and training outcomes for those care experienced young people as a core element of our corporate parenting responsibilities. And in looking at employment and skills linked outcomes, we have to ask ourselves as a service, is this good enough for my child? And that has to be our guiding principle in all of the work that we've been doing on this. So the work that we've been doing to date, there is a lot of detail in the report, so I'm not going to go through that now. We'll leave that for questions. We do have a cross-directorate working group around this, which I chair, and that's made up of employment and skills colleagues, the virtual school, the care leaver service, child-friendly Leeds, the voice and influence team, and our HR service. So we've worked together on the development of some practical actions, including reviewing all of the data that we've got, which actually is quite complex, but we're going to use some of that to develop a data dashboard. The development of work experience, and we've had 2 cycles of work experience with the Leeds Business Anchors offer and another 2 planned. And we're also leveraging our current services and prioritising this group for new funding when we get that. So in reality, what we're starting to see is more joined up support, but recognise that there's a lot more to do here. So what next? So we want to build on the links that we've been working on over the past 12 to 18 months. That strategic group and the working group is doing well, but we need to make sure that this is actually played out properly operationally and bringing those teams together, including with an increased presence in archways for the Employment and Skills Service, and hopefully that will help with that. We want to turn sort of the approaches we've been taking and the pilots that we're doing into sort of more business as usual. And from a work experience sort of perspective, City Development we're going to go first, and we're going to try sort of the approach from the business anchors within City Development. The nationally funded supported employment will recreate some of that much needed capacity for intensive support for this cohort, with 50 people this year to be supported through that fund. We've also identified the need for a dedicated resource to link together the city's employers with our young people. That was a key gap that we found, making sure that commitments and offers are clearly presented in the right way to the young people who are ready to access them. We want to ensure that we're utilising the changes in things like apprenticeships to focus them on our young people, for instance, using the new foundation apprenticeships to support new people who may have not necessarily got the grades that they need. And we'll also use the growth and skills levy for training people when they're in work to help develop in meaningful careers. So I'm going to pause there, and I think happy to go into questions around the report.
Thank you. And thank you, Fiona, as well for your work chairing that board. It really has been an incredible piece of work at quite a rate of knots. Councillors, who would like to kick off the questioning? Councillor Buckley.
Thank you, Chair. On page 77, at paragraph 27, it says a total of 19 young people signed up across both cohorts. I'm not sure, first of all, what is both cohorts? How would you describe them? And 19 seems a very low number. And then it goes on to say, due to a variety of reasons, not all young people completed the programme. Well, how many did complete the programme? Isn't 19 a very, very low number anyway?
So I'm happy to pick that one up. This was the first two cohorts of young people who came to do the work experience program with the business anchors, and it's very, very much been a pilot approach. And those young people, the first one, we worked with really small numbers, and it was through Leeds City College. So there were young people who came through the college. It was never meant to be a mass program, and the first one, I think there were only 5 people. I think in total there have been 15 that have completed this initial program, and we're building and scaling and learning from what we've got. So it is just, yes, it's small numbers, but that's where we're starting, not where we're going to end with this.
Oh, Councillor Goodall.
Thank you. Thanks for all the work you've done on this. As a careers advisor, I can see some great stuff in there that you're doing, the work experience, that's so important. The one word, and there might be a very good reason for this, the one word I didn't see mentioned anywhere was university. I work at the university, we have care leavers at the university. I know that's not necessarily right for everyone, but is there any kind of work happening with like the educational engagement team at the university or anything like that, so that at least the ones that could go to university have got that they're thinking of that as an option?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one. It's a very good point, and yeah, I'll reflect that. We probably should have reflected that in the report. But just to reassure you, yes, there is quite a lot of work that is going on with the universities. It's primarily led by our care leavers service, which is why it didn't make this report, because it's not employment and skills led, but they very much integrate with the Go Higher project, and about how can we support more of our care experienced young people into university and support them while they're in university. One of the things that we have been discussing with the business anchors in rolling out the work experience opportunities, do we open that up to young people that are at university? At the moment, it's just those that are in Leeds City College. So that is something that we may look to take that programme forward to support that cohort as well. The feedback from the employees is yes, they would like that. They can see the potential in that and the work readiness of those young people that are at university. We've just got a little bit of work to do about matching the experience that we can offer with the courses that they're on and the aspirations of those graduates. So if we come back this time next year, hopefully we can give more update on that.
Sounds like you're volunteering to come back this time next year, Gillian. Thank you very much. Who knew it was going to be you that gave me the first thing for the work programme? Okay, Councillor Rontry.
Thank you, Chair. And to some extent, I think Councillor Goodall did ask my question about where the higher education and degree study comes into all of this. I think it's excellent that we've got this specific emphasis on opportunities for care leavers, but I think here and more generally we've absolutely got to crack the nut of proper parity of esteem for further education, vocational training, apprenticeships alongside higher education and academic study. And is that sort of part of your thinking, sort of in this context and more generally? And what can you do you think, to sort of bring this forward, make sure that we do sort of have a proper understanding of what FE can bring? Thanks.
It's a really interesting point at the moment, and whenever a question is kind of raised with me about FE and higher education and vocational training, I think we have to take it back to the individual, and care leavers are individuals. It's not one group that have got the same aspirations. So for me, it very much starts in that careers-led approach. What are the ambitions of our young people? What skills do they possess? Where do they want to go? And that starts when they're children, not when they get into further education, not when they get into higher education. The younger we can work with people, the earlier we can introduce a careers lens to the support that we give to them. We will need all of the options because it will match the aspirations of that young people. And for some career ambitions, a vocational route will be the right route that they take. For others, a traditional academic route might be right. So I don't think it should be one or the other. It needs to be a combination of all pathways, depending upon what the young person wants and how we can support them to reach their full potential.
There's also, I suppose, an element of those two aren't mutually exclusive anymore. With level 5 apprenticeships, you can use a vocational method to get the same qualification as you would in a university. I wonder if, and it's not something I thought was going to be necessarily brought up, so I haven't pre-thought of a recommendation, but I wonder if there's something around a recommendation around how we support the vocational lens in our anchor network to get those higher level apprenticeship opportunities, because one of the key things feels to me, as also somebody that taught careers-based stuff in a sixth form, is the level 5, level 4 and level 5 actually apprenticeships are so wildly difficult to come by that actually that's the barrier more than the care experience. But because they're so hard to come by, actually our young people with the levels of resilience, the challenges that they've had through being care experience, should be in a better place than other kids that haven't had those experiences and can't put those on the applications. So A, how do we target that with our young people? And B, how do we make sure that those opportunities are available? If you're happy with the thrust of the recommendation, what I'll probably do, because it's literally just percolating, is confirm it with officers and with Becky and exec members, and then just send that recommendation out. And we'll probably have to at the next meeting just okay it officially. But that feels like something that might be valuable. Am I getting nods from folk? Okay, great. Councillor Ronchery, did you want to come back in?
Thanks. Just to say that, I was encouraged by that. I have an awful feeling sometimes when you hear people saying we need more apprenticeships, we need more further education, that they want that, but they don't necessarily want it for their kids. I think they're thinking about somebody else, and that does trouble me. But what you've told us today is reassuring. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move into my questions. If any other councillors want to come in, then you'll have to wait. No, I've got you. Anyone else? Stick your hand up. Lovely. Okay, so on paragraph 74, on page 74, paragraph 1, it talks about us targeting those closest to the labour market. And I wonder, on those furthest from the labour market, what about the others?
There is a public health phrase which we use when we talk about this, and I may get this the wrong way around, but it's about universal proportionalism, or proportionals of universalism. I'm never quite sure what way round is it. But the Employment and Skills Service is a service that is open to everybody, but we specifically target our work where it's going to have the biggest impact and where we can measure the biggest impact, and that tends to be those that are furthest from the labour market and where there is significant challenges. Which, you know, where is our work going to have the biggest impact? Where will it really move things forwards rather than be something that might just happen anyway? All of our services are available to absolutely everybody that feels they need that help, but we do proactively market it to those that are furthest from the labour market, and that's also what our external funding asks us to do. And we are receiving external funding because it is going to make a difference. It's not business as usual. For our care experienced young people specifically, we would argue that they meet that definition of furthest from the labour market because of the challenges that they faced in their early lives, and therefore they would fall into that group simply by the fact that they are underrepresented in the labour market. In general, the outcomes that are linked to employment and skills, the group does perform worse when you compare it against people that aren't care experienced, and therefore we would open up all our services to people that are care experienced regardless of their educational attainment, regardless of how they're doing in school at that moment in time, because we do think that it will have an impact if we put our resources into that space.
Thank you. Councillor Goodall, would you like to come back in?
Yeah, I was just wondering about whether you've considered with the employers and doing any mentoring. We've got mentoring at university where we try and specifically help students who are from families where nobody's been to university before. I'm just wondering, I didn't see it mentioned here, but I might have missed it. Is there any kind of prospect of employers doing some kind of individual mentoring with these care leavers?
It's not something we've been directly involved in from an employment and skills perspective. That's not to say that it doesn't exist within children's, and Jacinta might be able to tell us whether it does, but yeah, I think there's a huge amount of value in that. And I think from the conversations that we've had with employers, we talk about an employer engagement event that we did not long ago, where we were asking employers to say, if you can't offer employment opportunities at the moment, how can you help us offer experiences of the world for work? And mentoring is probably one of those areas. So if it doesn't exist at the moment, I think that's definitely something we could take forward, and it could add a lot of value.
It's something we're looking at, and we've had some interest from senior executives actually in terms of offering mentoring to care experienced young people. So that's fabulous. So something that we're looking into, and we can probably report back in a year to talk about the successes and challenges of that.
Brilliant. That's another volunteer. Okay, on page 75, paragraph 9, it talks about PEPs, and I guess one of the things that struggles with PEPs at the moment is around the lack of funding and the lack of people able to engage with it, and I just wonder how much pupil premium is currently retained for our young people in care currently, and if we were to want the PEPs to be more effective, how much we'd need to retain in the future in order to make that financially possible, because a good PEP is what then leads to a good outcome further down when you're a care leaver.
I'm afraid we can't answer that today. Our head of virtual school has provided quite a detailed technical answer to that, and I don't feel I could do it justice. So if we could circulate the answer to that after the scrutiny meeting, just to make sure we've got that information exactly right, because it very much sits within that virtual school space. And Jacinta, I don't know if you've got anything that you can add to that.
Yeah, so the virtual school head teacher, Jancis, is responsible for how that funding is determined and shared, and what's held by us and what's given to schools to support the individual attainment. And support of children. So we have got a technical response to that we can share, but it's the virtual school head's responsibility to make those decisions. So Jancis has prepared a response for us, which we'll share.
Lovely. Are you able to give an indication of whether more money would make a difference or no?
I think we would always love to have more money, wouldn't we? So in that sense, but there's a limit to how much we're funded per child from central government. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but we'd love more money, but we're constrained by what we're funded by.
Yeah, okay. I think I anticipated that there would be yes, it would be better to have more money. And so I was going to suggest a recommendation supporting the retention of a greater proportion of the PP Plus finances so that we can up this element of it to sort of provide that feed in. Given we haven't got the technical answer, I'll put a pin in that. But what we'll do is once we've got that technical answer and it's been shared, I'll do similar to what I've said with the previous recommendation earlier in the meeting. And we can agree that via email as members, and then I can bring that in the work programme section of the next meeting as a yes, we want to officially take it as a recommendation, or no. Anyone else want to come in before I just carry on? Councillor Bruce?
It's absolutely something we need to build on, and that is one thing we are really committed to driving forward. That how do we take some of this work out of the strategy and the piloting stage to make it business as usual, and support the people that work with our care experience young people in feeling empowered about what we're offering and being able to do that matchmaking service. The Employment and Skills Service over the last 12 months has invested quite heavily in working with PAs and social workers, foster carers, kinship carers, to try and help support them around knowledge and experience of employment and skills. And some will have more knowledge and experience than others, but that's an ongoing activity and something that we need to be really committed to, and we're hoping through things like co-location at Archways that will become organic, that the teams will see each other as being on the same team, and they will feel empowered and know who to pick the phone up to ask. So it's definitely something that is key. It's all very well us developing these initiatives, but actually if young people don't know about them and the routes to young people don't feel informed enough about them, we're never going to up the numbers in the way that we want. So that is absolutely the priority. Yeah, definitely. And you know, some of our young people have very complex lives, and they have a lot of people that work with them and support with them. So we need to do it in a way that empowers everybody that works with the young people, that they see that career lens, that it doesn't just become another person to advise the young person, that it becomes seamless. So it's absolutely really going to be the make or break of this, how we build on this over the next 12 months.
Lovely, thank you. Moving on to page 75, item 11 and 12, paragraph 11 and 12. I mean, it's always great to see the quality of work that Leeds City Council do. They sit on our corporate parenting board. They do a lot of work around our care experience young people. And yeah, just a shout out to them. And also a shout out to everyone in our corporate parenting team that work with them to make that possible. It really is a wonderful partnership. In terms of the statutory requirement that we provide work experience, I fully accept that work experience is useful, but it's rare that I did work experience on a TV set, and I am not, in fact, a film star. So it's rare that necessarily, actually, yes, I am. I'm on a webcast. It's rare that that necessarily has a massive impact on your work in the future. And actually can sometimes have a detrimental impact in that you realise you don't want to do that specific job, although I suppose that's positive in itself. What I would suggest, though, is that what isn't as well articulated is how we support them with extracurriculars. When you're writing your UCAS statement, when you're writing your applications for jobs, the soft skills of teamwork, the soft skills of leadership, the soft skills of resilience, how do we help our young people develop those through extracurriculars, and then also help them be able to utilise them effectively when writing these applications, especially in a world where we're learning more and more about how young people don't want to be outed as care experienced. So how do their teachers support them? When I was teaching, how would I best have supported a young person that I didn't know was care experienced to make as much as they could have of that care experience in terms of soft skills? If they're not wanting to be outed with staff, then we need to fill in the gap as their parents.
So we did get an answer to this from the head of virtual school, who reassured us and asked me to pass on the reassurance that enhancement activity is very much key of what the virtual school provides, and they work very closely with other services such as Child Friendly Leeds and our community service to ensure that our care experienced young people are getting a package of support that's looking at the essential skills. It used to be called soft skills, we now prefer essential skills, so communication, resilience, and ensure that they get the same exposure to that as any children, and can build that up, not necessarily through formal work experience. That is all recorded in the PEP plans, the PEP plans, and it's a key part of those plans, and it's something that the virtual school is monitoring very closely and looking to build on. So it's recognised that we need to provide that. It's not all just about formal education, it is all about all the things that go around that end up making the whole person, which is what employers tell us that they are looking for. I think when we talk about work experience as well, it's very important that we define it's not just about that traditional 2 weeks work experience that certainly I experienced and other people may have. It's about experiences of the world of work, and that can be embedded in curriculum. So that can be about how do we ensure employers are going into schools and developing curriculum that takes place in schools. It shouldn't just be a once a year activity. Our careers activities that we run throughout the city, how can we ensure that young people are accessing that, because that may inspire them. Young people often don't know what they don't know, so actually they need exposure to things in order to help shape those aspirations. So that's something we're very much working very closely with an employment skills on lens with the virtual school, is as well as targeting the actual physical skills where the young people are at, how can we make our careers activity and our informed choices activity better targeted towards our care experienced young people as part of an enhancement activity. And we are working with careers advisors. There is a network of careers advisors that we support through our Informed Choices programme, that we are asking them what help do they need in order to better support our young people, and people that may need some additional support because they don't have that parental backup. So again, it's an ongoing piece of work, but it's something that's really, really key about ensuring that everybody that is around that young person is able to step into that corporate parenting role and deliver what a parent would and should deliver.
Yeah, go for it, thank you.
Just to add to that, I think some of the work that Hannah's team does in terms of voice and influence is also phenomenal in terms of developing leadership skills for care experienced young people, and they're able to include that on their CVs and have a reference from us as well. But some of that self-advocacy, and it really is, I guess, small p political skills too. That's really impressive work. So just wanted to sort of acknowledge the work of Hannah's team on that, in terms of the Care Leaver Council and the Children in Care Council.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Her work is absolutely phenomenal. Okay, in terms of the page 78, paragraph 31, I guess with my own children, I would be trying to get them into jobs that are sustainable for the future. So if my kid came to me and said, you know what, I want to be an engineer, I would be like, well, have you considered being an air source heat pump engineer? Have you considered working in a green industry? Because that will be more likely to give you a job for the longer term than a gas boiler that's slowly going to be... it's very clear I don't know much about engineering, to be fair, is what's actually coming out of this. But I would be trying to guide my kids, and I would want us to be trying to guide our holistic kids into careers that they will be able to utilise for years to come. Is that something that we are currently putting sort of a marker in the sand, that these are the careers that we push harder when somebody comes to us with a, well, I'm interested in science, I'm interested in architecture type thing?
Absolutely, and through the development of our economic vision, we've actually spelt out what we see the jobs of the future in Leeds are going to be and where the growth is. But there is an important role in developing early level careers, and sometimes that may be to develop skills, particularly work-based skills, that might not necessarily be in the growth sectors. So there's a balance to be had about understanding the aspirations of our young people, understanding the jobs that are on offer at that entry level for that first steps into work, and then how do we build those in-work skills into what we would class as good careers and growth careers. And that's why we're looking to utilise things like the changes in the apprenticeship growth and skills levy, because our support shouldn't stop when people get into work. It needs to stop with development from that work into careers as well, and that's going to involve in-work training. One of the things that we are very focused on from employment and skills is using the economic vision to shape our core activity, because that is about spelling out where the jobs of the future are and what skills you may need to do that, and influencing career pathways. And again, that can be seen through our careers activity, where we'll be showcasing the ranges of the jobs that exist now, but also what will exist going forward, and the importance of transferable skills. As your career develops, new jobs will develop, and you need to be able to flex in doing that and constantly learn to be able to do that. So, and it also links through to what I said earlier about how we support careers advisors. Most of the careers advisors in Leeds are not employed by Leeds City Council, that they work within schools as careers leaders, they work within FE, they work within the universities. Through our network, we need to educate them about the labour market, about where the jobs are, about what skills are needed, so they can impart that knowledge onto the young people that they are working with on a daily basis.
Just looking around in case anyone else is indicating I don't want to take all the time. No, that's a lie, I do. What have we learnt from the experience of working with the business anchors on creating these work experience opportunities?
We've learnt a lot, and I think one of the most positive things actually, and I think it's really worth highlighting it, is the willingness of the business anchors to support us with this agenda. We've been knocking on an open door, and they absolutely wanted to work with us with this. They absolutely can see why they should be creating opportunities for our care experienced young people, but also what the business benefits is for them. They recognise that it's an untapped talent pool. We have realised that it was worth going slowly with this to get it right. One of the challenges that we've faced is making sure our young people are interested in these opportunities. As people that are experienced in the world of work, we can see the fantastic opportunity. For our young people, it's quite intimidating. We're asking them to come out of their safe FE environment where they're with their peers and walk into a business environment, and some of which are quite corporate. You know, it's not necessarily an environment they're comfortable with. So we've realised that we need to support our young people in that. We need to prepare them for it. And in some cases, we need to really convince them that it is a good thing to do, and they will benefit from it, because they don't always see that straight away. They just see it as, this is going to make me stand out. This doesn't feel comfortable to me. I'm not going to do this. So we need to really understand what some of their barriers would be. One of the things that we didn't consider in doing this is how it makes young people stand out from their peers. If we don't offer this work experience in a time that fits alongside their academic cycle, they are missing from lectures, coursework when their peers wouldn't be. and then they may be forced to explain why, and not all of our young people are wanting to declare that. So actually we need to time our work experience programme with when it benefits the academic cycle. So originally we did that in the middle of the term because, to be quite honest, the date worked for us and it worked for the employers, but it didn't necessarily work for the young people. So in the cycles that we've got going forward, we're now going to be running the next 2 cycles in school holidays, kind of, or the last week when they've got inset days, so it's not as much as kind of removing people from their academic learning and they don't stand out quite as much. We've also realised that we need a variety of opportunities. As I mentioned earlier, not all of our young people are the same. Not all of them want to do the same thing, and they're not all on the same courses. So we have a group of business anchors at the moment that are offering opportunities, but we need to expand those opportunities to give a choice to young people if we're going to increase the numbers that are coming through. And in the next cycle, that's what we're looking to do, as well as offering an opportunity ourselves as an employer, and to give people an access to some of the careers that we've got on offer through city development.
Thank you. Councillor Bruce?
Right. As a parent myself, I've been supporting my daughter who's going through A-levels and applying to university, etc. What support do our care leavers get with that regard, you know, to support them in exams and things like that, and also applying to university and actually going to university and helping along the way?
I'll answer that one. So I think we've spoken about the additional support that the virtual school offers in terms of applications for university, as well as specialist officers in Archway, the Leaving Care Service, to support with UCAS applications. In terms of actually visiting the universities themselves, so we do that in a variety of ways and really support young people to access some of that additional support that's in place for care leavers across most universities in the UK now, but being taken open days. There's so that might be foster carers, key workers, or social workers or PAs doing that travel with young people, making sure that they actually are supported to attend those open days and not sent off by themselves. And we have quite an extensive offer, I guess, for care leavers once they're being accepted into universities as well, to support with that and provide reassurance, and some of that involves returning home to a foster carer under staying put if they're off at university halls, and coming home during the summer holidays. So I don't know if that covers that.
Thank you. Another one from me. I wonder around in the performance figures. It's important that we focus on performance as well as a sort of more holistic report. It talks about there being 109 care experienced young people, but a lot of underreporting because people have to self-report. I wonder what we're doing to improve self-reporting and make that a more likely thing people do. And then also it talks about us not being able to capture the impact of adult learning in supporting foster and kinship carers. And I wonder if there's anything more that you could add around the work that's ongoing with that, because I know there's a huge amount that we do. And how do we make that targeted towards the young people's employment and skills? Thank you.
So I'll cover the adult learning first of all. Adult learning is externally funded, and there is certain paperwork that we have to fill out for every adult learner that comes on the course. There's certain paperwork that we fill out that we don't have a lot of influence over, and it doesn't collect data on whether people are foster carers or kinship carers at the moment. So that's something that we have to look as to how can we collect that to ensure that it's up to scrutiny, that the data is correct, but we're not asking people for information that we shouldn't be asking people for. However, the work with foster carers and kinship carers has grown by chance actually, and it's grown because we do a lot of family learning in community hubs where we are supporting people to improve their own literacy skills, their own numeracy skills, and their own health and well-being, with a view to if we can support the parents, then that will help support the young people. So it's all under the kind of early help banner. It was on one of our courses earlier on this year that somebody identified that they were a foster carer and they'd come across the course, they'd seen an advert for it through it circulated through our foster carer team. And the way that our adult learning was designed, the fact that it was so flexible, the fact that they could bring their young person, there was a creche on site, really, really worked for them. And we were able to use their user voice to help shape, well, how can we get more foster carers and kinship carers in, and how can you help us spread the word amongst this network? What we've not quite mastered yet is how we capture the growth of that, other than in the individual courses and the conversations that we have with people within those courses. So it's something that we're keen to do, and it's something that we are keen to target our family learning towards that cohort, because we know it will have an impact. If we support our foster carers, it will support our young people. And how can we, all of the support that we're offering to our PAs, to our social workers, to our careers advisors, how can we also extend that out to foster carers and kinship carers as well?
I might just come in about the challenges about self-declaration on forms for care leavers or care experienced young people and adults. So I think that's a well-established stigma, isn't it? And why I think this work about care experience as a protected characteristic is so important for Leeds and indeed nationally. And I think it's all about promoting positive self-identity and opportunities and pride. And I hope that through the work that we're doing as a partnership, the self-declaration and self-identification might improve, where people won't fear stigma and discrimination by identifying as care experience. So it's a work in progress, and I hope and expect that will change over time.
I guess just to come back on that I guess needs to be something from much younger as well, in the sense that actually the reasons that you end up in care can often cause things like complex PTSD, that then means that you have that low self-esteem anyway, that would then lead to that self-stigmatization. Even if we can change all of the strategy and infrastructure around them, what's inside is also needs targeting. So I'd be really interested to see that work go forward. But I fear that if I get too into that, I will be trampling. Look, Becky's looking at me as we speak, in case I trample on children and families. I've only got one more question. Has anybody else? Councillor Thompson.
I'll try and be very efficient. Oh, thank you. Just wondering what we're learning from other local authorities and what we're also sharing in terms of what we're learning with them, what kind of peer networks we have, and how we can use that most effectively.
I think it's fair to say that Leeds is quite a trailblazer in terms of the work we're doing in relation to care experience as a protected characteristic, and particularly in terms of employment and skills for care experienced adults. So it's a case of other local authorities often coming to us and asking for advice and learning opportunities and observing, and us providing some advice about how we're working towards that, and also working with Terry Galloway's interest group, I suppose, for want of a better word, and sharing our experiences and our learning more broadly and nationally about what's worked well and what some of the ongoing challenges are. But it feels very much like we're sharing our practice at the moment. Yeah.
I think that's very similar in the employment and skills world. We do work very closely with the local authorities, particularly those in West Yorkshire and particularly other core cities. And often some of the practice of other local authorities comes to us from employers. If we've got some large employers that maybe have worked something in a different area, they may come to us and say, could we replicate this here? But actually that's not happening as much. We're more finding it's the other way around. Our employers are saying, can you come and support us in presentations in our other sites so that we can roll this out in other locations? But there is always things to learn, and it's really important that we recognise that, and we do keep speaking to other local authorities, and if there is best practice, we're not afraid to pinch with pride, really. So.
If I just add to this as well, so not necessarily with other local authorities, but we have shared the work that we're doing with the civil service as well. And I'm in contact with the Cabinet Office. They've been interested to understand what we're doing, and I'm following up with conversations with them. So that is much more like broad than just with local authorities. But they are aware that what we're doing, we have been quite leading around some of this, so it's been good to share that more broadly too.
Thank you for that comment. That also reminds me that we had the Joint Committee on Human Rights coming to visit a couple of weeks ago, and they were very impressed with the work that we've been doing on care experience as a protected characteristic also. So it's remiss of me not to mention that, so just to add to that.
Thank you. And that really leads to my last question really well, almost like we'd planned it, which we didn't. This report really shows the incredible work that's going on. And there's one small section at the end that gives me real cause for concern, and that's around the key risks. And actually the fact that we're having to rely on short-term external funding in order to keep this work going is terrifying, because this work needs to grow, not grow. What's the opposite of grow? Decline. And I guess I would like for us to see, we all know the situation with local government funding. I'm not suggesting that it's suddenly going to become part of the core funded model necessarily, but actually how can we as a scrutiny board support to get this to be resourced in a more sustainable way in terms of bigger, longer term, multi-year external funding as opposed to the short-term grant situation. I think that could form the basis for a recommendation. I'm not sure whether that's something other members want to comment on or feel positive about, negative about. Councillor Thompson?
Just wondering, given the overlap, would it be worth I guess there's not much time left in the year to do it with children and families, but because it impacts both, whether the two chairs might want to write or via Councillor Hayden, Councillor Pryor otherwise, but I think it would be worth doing for sure.
So we're happy with the theory, we just need to iron out exactly how best to do it. Because I also don't want it to come across as we want more money from Central Council when there just isn't money for that. Councillor Pryor, would you like to, I see your ears have pricked up. Have you got anything to add?
No, but I'm happy to discuss offline kind of the best way, but I agree with the direction of travel.
Excellent. I'm going to give everyone one final opportunity if you've got any final questions that you'd like to come in on. Anything finally from officers or Councillor Pryor that you'd like to add that we haven't touched on that you want to exhibit? No? Okay, so the actions from this are to note the work undertaken by the Employment and Skills Service in supporting care experienced young people, recognising the positive impact of targeted interventions and partnership working, which I think we've done. Endorse the strategic direction of travel outlined in the report, including strengthened commitments to care experienced young people and enhanced cross-directorate collaboration. I think very clearly that's been done. Acknowledge and endorse the proposed plans and priorities for the next financial year with a particular focus on improving education, employment and training outcomes for care leavers and those at risk of becoming not in education, employment or training, so NEET. We've covered several things around that and it's covered in more detail within the report. Support continued partnership between the Employment and Skills Service, Children's Services and Care Leavers Services and the virtual school head to ensure seamless transitions and consistent support for young people moving into adulthood. We clearly continue to support that and I am particularly supportive. It's been something that I was working on a couple of years back, is getting that cohabitation of the Employment and Skills team within Archways. I think it's brilliant that that's now occurring on a more formalised basis. Encourage ongoing efforts to leverage council-funded programmes and external funding streams to add value and extend the impact of employment and skills initiatives across Leeds. And then in addition to that, request that consideration is given as to how work in this area can be resourced in a sustainable way, which I'll pick up as chair outside with Councillor Pryor. And then finally, And it was further, actually, in the answer to the extracurricular question, the importance of PEPs was outlined in there as well. So something being brought forward on how we can make PEPs more sustainable. But again, we'll go back and do that via email and bring it back officially once I've seen, and we've all seen, that technical answer from Jancis. Anything from the debate that I've missed, members, that we wanted as a recommendation? No? All happy? Wonderful. In which case, I'll close that item and move on to item 10. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. The next public meeting of the Scrutiny Board will take place at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, the 18th of March, with a pre-meeting for all Scrutiny Board members at 9:30 a.m. And with that, we'll close. Thank you.